Hello and welcome to another anime lore and theory video. I'm Dragongod, your host, and today we are going to take a closer look at Ainz Ooal Gown vs Dragongod ORSTED. And before we start, spoiler warning for both anime. But before we're going to take a closer look at any of this, let me quickly thank my Patreons for supporting this channel, as well as say thanks to all users of the YouTube thanks function for making one-time donations. And with that said, let's get to the topic at hand. Dragongod ORSTED vs Undead Sorcerer King Ainz Ooal Gown would probably be one of the most interesting battle scenarios in the entire landscape of anime, and there are a whole range of reasons for that. But let's get first into the combatants themselves and who they actually are, so that all are on the same page. Ainz Ooal Gown is the undisputed overlord of the Great Tomb of Nazarick. He can unleash children of the outer gods, devastating heat rays, nuclear explosions, and all kinds of death magic, and summon many undead. And left to their own devices, these undead could conquer entire countries on their own, such as a Death Emperor, a Grim Reaper Thanatos, or an entire legion of Death Knights. Furthermore, his super team magic is capable of freezing entire stretches of land, and one of his many enormously powerful items enables him to use the spell Wish Upon a Star to make the impossible possible. In addition, his guild item, the Staff of Ainz Ooal Gown, is blessed with many additional buffs and summons. And that's still not all, because Ainz Ooal Gown can also use 11 word items in his possession, even though he only carries one, the red orb in his chest cavity on his person. These items have the power to change the word and protect the user from basically eradication by other word items or the magic of the true dragons. Additionally, his body is faster, stronger, and has better reflexes and visual capabilities than a mere human one's. Furthermore, any pain is muted to an extreme degree, and any emotion that could cloud his judgment is suppressed. In short, he is one of the quintessential archetypical isekai protagonists, with all of the overpowered abilities he has. On the other hand, we have the three-quarter god ORSTED. He is the strongest of the dragon gods, and his power surpasses even that of Laplace, the fighting god, or the technic god, who officially is ranked number 1. But ORSTED is stronger here as well. And even though Ainz has a few years of combat experience in Yggdrasil Online and in the New World, ORSTED is many thousand years old, and possesses a mental catalogue of fighting stances, sword strikes, and so on and so forth that spans maybe millions of years. No one knows the exact number. And he also has an extremely overpowered sword with which he defeated even the North god in his armor, in the armor of Laplace during the final battle of Mushoku Tensei, and he still had plenty of mana left over afterwards. Which brings us to the only real weakness. This man has the mana regeneration of an average human, despite having a mana pool that should be slightly larger than Laplace's, considering he's stronger overall. This is simply because so much of his mana is consumed by an anti-information spell that hides ORSTED completely from the eyes of Vitogami. Additionally, ORSTED likely knows significantly more spells than Ainz's 600 plus, and will be able to use his mana more sparingly and effectively. Furthermore, through the ability Disturb Magic, he can completely interrupt spellcasting simply by using his own mana to disrupt the opponent's mana. So for the Sorcerer King Ainz Ooal Gown, this will likely be an equally disadvantageous fight as the one against Shaltir Bloodfallen. However, due to his weak mana regeneration, ORSTED will probably be extremely conservative with his magic and try to end the fight against Ainz Ooal Gown using physical means rather than casting spells himself. And how the conflict comes about is relatively simple. ORSTED, who was brought into the Overlord's new world following a failed teleportation spell, was for the first time not feared by everybody on the planet. Unfortunately, this happened shortly after Ainz Ooal Gown fended off Team Foresight and the rest of the invaders in Volume 7, and concerned members. And therefore ORSTED is sent on a rescue mission by the Tavern Keeper. After the owner of the Singing Apple temporarily entrusted the shop to Team Fawcett for protection, he now worries about the 4 of them and wants to return the favor. Orsted, of course, is happy to help, because deep down he's a good guy. And he's grateful and a loyal man, who just happens to be heavily cursed. Unfortunately, this is the start of the conflict because his social skills are near zero. So when he tells the undead overlord that he is going into the Grey Tomb to save Arsha and company, he is told that she is dead and that Ainz, already annoyed by the recent visitors, wants no one in his tomb. Orsted understandably sees the undead overlord as a threat to the entire world he finds himself in. And while he actually wants to return to the six-sided world of Mushoku Tensei, he doesn't mind staying here for a few more years to grow stronger, try out new weapons and items to increase his power even further, especially items that accelerate one's natural mana regeneration, which have caught his eye. He is already wearing several items on his body that don't fully restore his mana regeneration, but at least reduces the waiting time from, let's say, a 30-year period to about 10 years in total. And despite his lack of social skills, #relatable, Orsted can put 2 and 2 together. He figures he will surely find even better mana regeneration items on the body of this undead sorcerer. And of course he doesn't want the world to suffer under a tyrant either. The mere thought of a second Titogami makes him angry and ready for battle. On the other hand, the threat to erase every ally and friend of his who might pose a threat to the world is the exact thing that prompts Ainz to fight. However, without his scholar voice changing, Ainz maintains control of himself. Yet his voice and demeanor grow colder, something that did not escape Orsted. He knows a fight is on. And so the battle begins. For a brief moment Ainz Ooal Gown thought he saw Touch Me, as a silvery white figure rushed towards him at unimaginable speed and struck him across the vast plains outside the hilly landscape that hides the Grey Tomb. Ainz was perplexed. Even his superhuman senses could barely keep up with Orsted. He hadn't experienced anything like this even during his battle against Sheltier Bloodfallen. He knew he was fighting an enormously powerful opponent, one whose palm strikes and fists inflict bludgeoning damage as well, Ainz Ooal Gown's greatest physical weakness. And before the rushing Orsted could land a second hit on Ainz, lying on the ground, Ainz's skeletal body vanished beneath the incoming fist strike, which plowed up the earth and split it into 2. And in a considerable area at that. High above, hiding behind the dense cloud hovering over the Cuts Plains. The very fog that usually covers the layer of the undead plain like a thick blanket, Ainz is perplexed by the level of opponent he has in front of him. He knew what had to be done, and he knew how he could win the fight. Orsted looked up and without hesitation targeted the cloud in which Ainz had just healed himself using negative energy. A fraction of a second later, that patch of fog was bathed in white and vanished. The cold voice of Ainz Ooal Gown echoed right next to the Dragongod's ears. The fist with which he was about to launch Ainz into the orbit froze, as did the rest of his powerful body, as he felt his heart was nearly crushed. A mocking was all that escaped Ainz Ooal Gown's non-existent lips, as the undead overlord belonging to the 5% of players who could time their spells and skills perfectly. After Ainz had not only healed but also buffed himself, he had teleported himself behind the Dragongod before unleashing Grasp Hard, hoping for the kill, but he was happy with the stun. And now he began to unleash the spell already slumbering in his other hand, which he had also enhanced with triplet maximized Wide in Magic. Nuclear Blast. A gigantic mushroom cloud enveloped Ainz and Orsted, but while the undead overlord was immune to fire damage thanks to his clothing, and as seen later in his fight against the evil Lord of Wrath, could ward off the remaining damage and numerous negative status effects thanks to his undead body and another spell, Body of Effulgent Burial. Orsted was blown almost to the edge of the plains, far, far away from Nazarick and the caster. Yet the Dragon God resisted all negative effects of nuclear blast through sheer strength and power, and his Dragon God battle aura. Ainz meanwhile used the time to buff himself, just as he did before his fight against Sheltie Bloodfallen. And that brings us to the end of part 1 of this Ainz Ooal Gown Fighting Orsted series. As for a fight like this, we need more than just one video, and next time things will really start to get intense. Until then, it's your turn. Let me know what you think about the fight against Orsted and about Ainz and Orsted Mushoku Tensei Overlord, and of course about this video. And while you type, I say thank you very much for watching, thanks to all of my Patreon members for supporting this channel, and as usual, I say my special thanks to Arder Daddy Arder, ASK, Badger Ye, Bad Burrito 316, Beezer, Ben C, Brandon S, Brandon D, Brodo, Chrissy, Crowley0221, Sia, Crystal Prime, Dead Slime, Death is Mercy, Deathless Dragonlord, Demon Xenomorph 1987, Devin Downen, Ding Dong, Dinpap, Dragonlord Placidus Saxophone, Duckwagon, Dunkler Krieger, Dystopia, Dystopia II, Enigmatic Unicorn, Feralchivan, Guy with That Head, Hector Marino, Hoss, Huster, Jacob G, Jana B, Jason, J. Morris, Chromius, Kyle R, Lee K. Long, Legendarius, Lelouch wie Britannia with a Mustache, Lexus Fox, Lord Nishikian Rai, Lord Touch Me, Lork, Loverazer, Mervek, Mr. Shoes, Mr. Tweaker, Michael R, Michael Y, Nope, Oh Hell No, Normal Toad, O'Kill, Overlord General Gasper, Paddy Pantum, Personage, Ruru, Primus 11, Rhinomere, Kyonekerkos P, Shergox's Daddy, Shadow Lightning Wolf, Shrinekeeper, Sir Axolotl, Super Tier Magic Batista Bomb, Supreme Cheese, Staris, Ted, Texas Deer, The Orc Warboss, Rag Edsmesha, T.E. Wang, Vash Hawkeye, Vegito 27, Venture Fanatic, Wilhelm, Zinukai, and Zonagon. Thanks guys. Anyway, have a nice day, and I hope to see you all again soon.